Ladies and gentlemen, today let's talk about a fascinating and often emotional topic: why men come back after a period of no contact. When a relationship ends or a connection pauses, it's easy to assume it's the end. But time and time again, many women experience that unexpected text, call, or visit from the man who once walked away. Why does this happen? It's not just chance. It's rooted in psychology, emotions, and human behavior. First, understand that distance creates desire. When you're no longer available, you become a mystery again, and mystery is magnetic. Secondly, men often realize what they lost only after they've had space to reflect. Familiarity breeds comfort, but absence highlights value. Third, emotional attachments don't simply vanish. Bonds take time to build, and they take even longer to truly break. Men often miss not just the relationship, but the feeling they had when they were with you. Fourth, growth is attractive. When you focus on yourself during no contact, your energy shifts, and men can sense that even from afar. When a man is constantly around you, when he has easy, daily access to your time, your attention, and your emotions, it's very easy for him to take that presence for granted. Humans are wired to adapt quickly to what feels familiar. When someone is consistently available, our minds can sometimes start to undervalue their presence, even if we deeply care for them. It's not because the feelings weren't real, it's because familiarity can dull the sharpness of appreciation. But the moment you step back, when you cut off communication, withdraw your energy, and create real space, something powerful begins to happen. Suddenly, the man who was used to your good morning texts, your encouragement, your laughter, your emotional support, and your physical presence feels an unexpected void. That gap between expectation and reality creates a discomfort he wasn't prepared for. In the silence, his mind starts to wonder. He begins to question, was I wrong to let her go? Why do I feel her absence so heavily? What was once taken for granted now feels like a precious loss. This curiosity, combined with an innate desire to reclaim what felt good, powerful, and affirming, can trigger a deep longing inside him. Distance does something else too. It revives the mystery around you. When a man doesn't know what you're thinking, what you're feeling, or what you're doing, it forces his imagination to work over time. Mystery is a powerful emotional magnet because humans are naturally drawn to what they cannot fully understand or predict. When you were always available, there were no unanswered questions. But now, without access to your life, without updates about your day, without the privilege of your presence, he starts to wonder about you in ways he hasn't in a long time, or perhaps ever. Additionally, distance allows your image to freeze in his memory. He remembers you at your best, your smile, your energy, the way you made him feel safe, valued, and understood, without new interactions to overwrite those memories with negativity or conflict. His mind tends to focus on the highlights of the connection rather than the low points. In this way, distance not only creates desire, it amplifies and romanticizes the version of you he remembers. In a world where instant gratification is the norm, pulling back and creating real distance taps into an ancient, deeper part of human nature, the longing for what we can't immediately have. It's not about playing games, it's about reclaiming your value, reminding both yourself and him that access to your heart is a privilege, not a given. Distance isn't just physical. It's emotional, mental, and energetic. When you stop chasing, stop explaining, stop trying to fix things, you allow him the space to feel the full weight of your absence. And very often, that weight is what makes him realize just how much he truly desires you. When a relationship ends or a period of silence begins, A man doesn't always immediately recognize the impact of your absence. In the beginning, he might feel a sense of freedom, a lightness that comes from no longer having emotional responsibilities. Especially if the relationship was going through challenges, his initial reaction could be one of relief, as if he has finally escaped the pressure or the expectations. But here's the truth, that feeling is almost always temporary. Relief is a surface emotion. It doesn't address the deeper emotional attachment that was formed over time. After the initial thrill of independence fades, real reflection begins to creep in, often quietly, often when he least expects it. Maybe it's triggered by a familiar song, a passing scent, a memory of a shared laugh, or simply a quiet moment alone. Reflection is rarely immediate because our minds need space and contrast to truly evaluate what we once had. When he finally has the time and solitude to sit with his own emotions, he begins to see the relationship from a different lens, one that isn't clouded by the heat of arguments or the stress of expectations. He starts to remember the subtle, beautiful things you brought into his life, your kindness, your patience, the way you believed in him when he doubted himself, the warmth of your embrace, the sparkle in your eyes when you laughed. These memories begin to form a collage of emotional snapshots that no new distraction can fully erase. Reflection also exposes the role he played in the breakdown. Without you there to engage with, to blame, or to argue with, he has no choice but to confront his own actions, his own flaws, his own immaturity or emotional unavailability. This can be a painful but necessary part of growth. Men, often socialized to suppress emotions, sometimes only access their deeper feelings after significant loss and silence. Your absence gives him the mirror he may have resisted looking into when you were present. Realization after reflection is different from mere missing someone. It's not just loneliness. It's a deep awareness that he let something valuable slip away, that perhaps he misjudged you or failed to appreciate what you offered. It's in this reflective state that he starts to understand the gravity of your role in his life. Maybe you were the one person who saw him for who he truly was. Maybe you were his peace, his home, his encourager, even when he couldn't fully express his need for you. Reflection strips away ego, pride, and excuses. With time, the emotional noise quiets down and the heart speaks louder. It whispers truths he tried to ignore. That you mattered more than he admitted, that the connection wasn't ordinary, that the bond wasn't easily replaceable. It's through this process that a man often feels pulled back, drawn again to the one person who left an imprint no one else could match. Realization doesn't happen in chaos. It requires the very thing that no contact provides: silence, distance, and time. Only then can a man truly see what he had, what he lost, and what he may desperately wish to reclaim. Human connections are not as simple as flipping a switch, one moment on, the next moment off. Relationships, especially those built on real affection, shared experiences, and emotional intimacy, leave behind invisible threads that continue to connect two people long after physical contact has ended. Emotional bonds are not easily broken because they are woven through vulnerability, trust, time, and shared memories. When you form an emotional connection with a man, it isn't just about spending time together or exchanging words. It's about building a silent understanding, a familiarity that reaches into his sense of safety and belonging. You become part of his emotional landscape, a voice in his mind, a comfort in his memory, a feeling associated with home. Even if he tries to move forward, even if he meets new people or throws himself into distractions, that emotional imprint doesn't simply vanish. It lingers beneath the surface, sometimes dormant, sometimes actively missed. Often, men are taught, culturally and emotionally, to compartmentalize their feelings. They might tell themselves that they can walk away cleanly, that starting fresh will erase the past. But emotional bonds don't operate by the rules of logic. A smell, a song, a random moment of happiness or sadness can trigger a wave of emotion so powerful that it brings you rushing back to his mind. And when that happens, he realizes that no matter how much time has passed, the bond is still alive inside him. The strength of emotional attachment is not always obvious at first. At the beginning of no contact, he might be riding on the momentum of separation, telling himself he's fine, convincing himself he's better off. But emotions don't obey timelines. What is suppressed only grows stronger with time. When the distractions lose their effectiveness, when the silence becomes too loud, and when the loneliness creeps in at night, the emotional ties he thought he could ignore start pulling at him with surprising intensity. What makes these bonds so persistent is that they are tied to his sense of identity. When you build a deep connection with someone, you don't just share time, you share dreams, fears, victories, failures. You witness each other's most human moments. You become a mirror, reflecting back parts of him he might not show to anyone else. That emotional intimacy doesn't just disappear because a decision was made to separate. It's stored in his memory, in his body, and in his subconscious. Even if he tries to replace you with someone new, the bond doesn't simply transfer. Emotional attachments are unique. No two relationships feel exactly the same because no two connections are built with the same energy, experiences, and chemistry. Comparisons inevitably happen, and often the realization dawns that the emotional fulfillment he experienced with you is not easily replicated. Men may struggle to articulate this feeling. They might not say, "I miss our emotional bond," because it's more visceral than verbal. Instead, they feel an ache, a pull, a yearning that words can't fully capture. They just know that something is missing. And very often, that something is you. Emotional bonds linger because they are built on a foundation of authenticity, shared vulnerability, and mutual growth. These are not things that time can easily erase, nor can pride, anger, or even new relationships completely extinguish them. They remain alive, quietly waiting, often growing stronger in the silence until he can no longer ignore their presence. One of the most powerful and underestimated forces that draws a man back after no contact is the transformation that occurs within you. The personal growth, the healing, the elevation of your spirit and confidence. Growth is magnetic because it signals change, independence, and self-respect, all of which naturally attract curiosity and admiration. When a relationship ends, many people stay stuck in grief, clinging to what was lost. But to those who choose to take that time to invest in themselves, to heal, to evolve, to rediscover who they are outside of the relationship, create a new version of themselves that is vibrant, strong, and compelling. Instead of focusing on what went wrong, they focus on how they can become better, wiser, more self-assured. This inner work does not go unnoticed, even from a distance. Men are instinctively drawn to women who embody self-worth. During no contact, when you are not chasing, not pleading, not trying to win him back, you are silently communicating one of the most powerful messages. I value myself enough to walk away if I'm not valued. This quiet confidence is unforgettable. It shows a level of emotional maturity and self-respect that demands respect in return. As you grow, emotionally, mentally, even physically, you naturally begin to shift your energy. You're no longer the same woman who cried, begged, or felt broken. Instead, You are focused on your passions, your health, your purpose. You laugh more easily, you radiate peace, you glow from within. This kind of transformation is undeniable, and energy doesn't lie. Even if you and he are not speaking, even if there's been no communication, the change in your spirit has a way of reaching him energetically. Additionally, growth highlights contrast. The man remembers the version of you he knew, and now he senses or hears about the new you. The woman who glows differently, speaks differently, moves through life with renewed confidence. That contrast is deeply compelling because it makes him realize two things. First, that you were always capable of greatness, and second, that he might no longer be a part of the incredible journey you are on. That thought can trigger deep emotions, regret, admiration, and a powerful desire to re-enter your life. Personal growth also shifts the dynamic of the relationship, where once he may have felt like the center of your emotional world, now he realizes you are the center of your own world. You have reclaimed your power, and in doing so, you change the balance. You are no longer seeking validation from him. You are validating yourself. This reversal often stirs a man's deeper instincts, making him feel a new sense of pursuit and admiration for you. Moreover, your growth serves as a mirror to him. It forces him to confront his own stagnation or areas where he hasn't yet evolved. Seeing you thriving can ignite a sense of urgency within him, a realization that if he wants to be part of your life again, he must rise to meet the new standard you have set for yourself. Personal growth is not just about external achievements. It's about internal transformation. It's about healing your wounds, reclaiming your joy, rebuilding your self-trust, and stepping into the fullest expression of who you are meant to be. This kind of growth creates an irresistible gravity that naturally pulls people, including the man who once left, back into your orbit. As much as we like to believe that all actions stem from deep emotional revelations, sometimes human behavior is motivated by something far less noble than the desire to satisfy the ego. The male ego, in particular, can be a fragile and powerful force. After a period of no contact, a man's urge to reach out is often tied not just to missing you, but to needing validation that he is still important in your life. When a man knows you were deeply invested in him, when he felt your love, admiration, or loyalty, that experience becomes a source of unconscious validation for his sense of worth. You weren't just a partner, you were a mirror reflecting his desirability, his masculinity, his ability to be loved. And when you go silent, when you disappear from his life without chasing after him or fighting for his attention, that mirror shatters. Suddenly, he no longer has easy access to the emotional support and attention that once fed his self-esteem. The silence becomes louder than any words. Your absence leaves unanswered questions floating in his mind. Does she still care? Is she thinking about me? Has she moved on? These questions don't just stir curiosity, they challenge his ego. If he was used to being the center of your emotional world, your lack of communication is not just confusing, it's threatening. It forces him to wonder if he has lost the special place he once held in your heart. Ego-driven returns are often impulsive. A man may text out of nowhere, call late at night, or suddenly react to your social media posts after weeks or months of silence. On the surface, it might seem like he's had a massive realization about your importance. Sometimes he has, but other times it's more about his internal need to know he still has a hold on you. It's about reaffirming that he is still desired, still wanted, still significant. Men, just like women, want to feel irreplaceable. But when you engage in no contact and focus on yourself, You send a clear, powerful message. You are no longer putting him on a pedestal. You are no longer feeding his ego with attention, apologies, or desperate attempts to rekindle the connection. And for some men, that shift is deeply unsettling. It makes them question their own worth and forces them to seek out the validation they once received so freely. In many cases, the more confident and independent you appear during no contact, the stronger the urge for him to reclaim his former position in your life. Ego doesn't respond well to being ignored. Ego craves reassurance. And when that reassurance is no longer given voluntarily, the man who once seemed so sure of walking away may find himself needing to reach out. Not because he is ready for a real relationship, but because he needs to know he still matters. Understanding this dynamic is crucial. Not every man who returns is doing so out of pure love or genuine remorse. Sometimes it's the bruised ego that drives him back. He wants to confirm that you still feel for him the way you once did, that you still long for him, that you are still available emotionally. He seeks to satisfy the part of himself that needs to feel wanted, admired, and remembered. Ego and validation are powerful psychological drivers. They operate beneath the surface of conscious thought, influencing behavior in subtle but undeniable ways. Even the most confident-seeming men are not immune to the need for affirmation. And in the absence of your attention, their ego can push them to circle back, sometimes sooner, sometimes much later, driven by the need to reclaim the sense of importance they once felt in your presence. One of the reasons a man may find himself drawn back to you after a period of no contact is the inevitable comparisons he begins to make between what he had with you and what he encounters with others. At first, it may seem to him that moving on will be easy. The excitement of new people, new conversations, and fresh beginnings can create a temporary sense of distraction and hope. But as time goes on, he starts to realize that true emotional connections are rare, and the depth of what you shared isn't easily duplicated. When a man engages with someone new, he often brings along invisible expectations molded by his past experiences. And if you were someone who touched him deeply, emotionally or spiritually, those expectations are even higher. He might meet someone who is attractive, charming, or fun, but as the initial excitement fades, he subconsciously begins to measure them against the memory of you. He notices the way conversations feel less natural, how the emotional intimacy seems forced, or how laughter isn't quite as effortless. Small things, the way you understood his silence, the way you encouraged his dreams, the way you made even ordinary moments feel extraordinary, start to loom larger in his mind. Comparison is often subtle at first. Maybe he notices how someone else doesn't listen with the same patience you did. Maybe he realizes how your sense of humor was more aligned with his. Or maybe it's the absence of emotional safety, the comfort he felt opening up to you, that leaves him feeling disconnected in new relationships. These differences begin to create an inner restlessness, a gnawing feeling that something important is missing, even if he can't articulate it right away. What makes these comparisons even more powerful is the realization that chemistry and connection are not things that can be manufactured. Emotional bonds, shared values, trust, and deep understanding are built over time through countless small moments of vulnerability and support. When he doesn't find that same depth elsewhere, and especially when he tries but fails, the value of what he had with you becomes magnified. It's no longer just about missing you. It's about understanding that what you offered was rare, meaningful, and profoundly fulfilling in a way he can't easily replicate. Additionally, the more he compares, the more regret can start to build. He begins to question his decisions. Did I give up something real for something superficial? Was I too quick to let go of someone who actually understood me? These reflections are often uncomfortable, but necessary, and they become more intense the longer he goes without finding a connection that matches or surpasses what he had with you. There's also an emotional imprint that you leave behind when you genuinely love and care for someone. Your support, your energy, your essence. It stays with him even when he tries to move forward. Every experience with someone new is filtered through the lens of the emotional safety, excitement, and companionship you provided. And often, without realizing it at first, he begins to crave the unique way you made him feel. Something that casual encounters or surface-level connections can't replicate. Comparison becomes a silent teacher. It highlights everything that was real, everything that was meaningful, and everything that is now missing. It makes him see that not all relationships are equal. Not all hearts are interchangeable. And sometimes, when the weight of those comparisons becomes too heavy, he realizes that what he left behind was far more valuable than he had acknowledged, pushing him toward the very person he once thought he could live without. One of the most potent reasons a man returns after no contact is the existence of unfinished emotional business. The lingering feelings, conversations, and unresolved emotions that were left hanging when the relationship ended. Relationships, especially meaningful ones, don't always conclude neatly. They often end in the middle of emotional storms, miscommunications, or moments when words were left unsaid and feelings were left unexpressed. This emotional unfinishedness creates a powerful gravitational pull that time and distance can't easily erase. When the dust first settles after a breakup, it's easy to mistake silence for closure. Both people may tell themselves it's over, that it's best to move on, that there's nothing left to be said. But deep down, unresolved emotions remain like open loops in the mind. A part of him may wonder if you understood how much he truly cared, even if he didn't always show it. Another part of him may feel guilt, regret, or confusion about how things ended, and those emotions don't just quietly fade away with time. They linger, sometimes even growing stronger in the silence. No contact provides the necessary space for reflection, but it also allows the emotional echoes of the past to grow louder. Without the daily distractions of conflict or conversation, a man begins to truly sit with what was left undone between you. Questions emerge in his mind. Did I make the right decision? What if she was the one? Why do I still feel this way even after all this time? These questions don't come because of weakness. They come because human beings are wired to seek emotional resolution. And when that resolution is absent, it creates a persistent emotional itch that needs to be scratched. The mind craves closure, but the heart often resists it. Even if logically he knows the relationship ended for a reason, the emotional part of him, the part that loved, trusted, and felt seen by you, struggles to let go without understanding, without real acknowledgement, without the full circle moment that never happened. And so, the emotional business remains unfinished, lingering like a chapter of a book that was never properly concluded. Moreover, emotions are not static. As he experiences life without you, new layers of emotion often surface. He may encounter moments of joy, sadness, achievement, or struggle, and find himself wishing you were there to share them. He might achieve something he always wanted, but feel the hollowness of your absence during his celebration. Or he may face a hardship and long for your comforting words and steady presence. These experiences build on the original unfinished emotional business, layering new feelings of longing, regret, and even admiration onto what was already unresolved. Even if he tries to numb these feelings through work, distractions, new relationships, the emotional connection he had with you doesn't just dissolve. True emotional ties embed themselves deeply into a person's experience of life. And when something has been left unresolved, it nags at the subconscious, sometimes for weeks, months, or even years, until the person feels compelled to revisit it, to make sense of it, to seek healing, or even just to reconnect with the person who once mattered so much. Unfinished emotional business is powerful because it binds people through shared history, shared emotions, and unspoken truths. It is often not about rekindling the past exactly as it was, but about acknowledging the bond that was never properly honored or healed. And sometimes that drive to finish what was emotionally left undone becomes so strong that it pulls him back toward you, no matter how much time has passed, no matter what has changed. Sometimes it takes separation silence, an absence for true feelings to rise fully to the surface. During the day-to-day flow of a relationship, it's easy for people, especially men, to take things for granted. Comfort, affection, loyalty, and emotional support can become so intertwined with daily life that their true value becomes invisible. It's only when these things are suddenly removed that a man is forced to confront the depth of what he actually felt all along. No contact strips away the noise. Without the constant presence of you, your voice, your messages, your warmth, he loses not just a person, but an emotional anchor in his life. And in that loss, something powerful happens. Clarity begins to emerge. He starts to notice the difference between being alone and being without you. It's not simply the absence of company, it's the absence of a very specific, irreplaceable connection that he feels on a soul deep level. At first, he may distract himself. He might throw himself into work, hobbies, friends, or even casual dating. But distractions are surface-level solutions to a heart-level problem. When the temporary thrills wear off, when the nights get quiet, when the moments that mattered the most replay in his mind, he's confronted by a truth he can no longer avoid. The feelings he had for you weren't casual, weren't fleeting, weren't easily replaced. Men often process emotions differently than women. Where a woman might grieve immediately and process her feelings openly, many men push emotions down, delay facing them, and only recognize the true magnitude of their love once they feel its absence. It's not necessarily because they care less. It's often because they were never taught how to sit with vulnerability, how to name their emotional needs, or how to recognize love when it's quietly woven through everyday moments instead of grand gestures. Over time, he might realize it wasn't just companionship he missed. It was your laugh, your encouragement, your ability to make him feel understood in a way no one else could. It wasn't just the activities you did together. It was the way you made him feel seen, valued, and accepted even in his imperfections. Those realizations can be startling, even overwhelming. True feelings have a way of demanding attention when everything else has gone silent. Moreover, when a man has experienced authentic love, casual encounters or surface-level connections pale in comparison. No amount of new experiences can recreate the safety, the depth, and the excitement of being with someone who genuinely touched his heart. The longer he is without you, the more undeniable the realization becomes the connection was rare, and the feelings he had, and still has, are not just echoes of the past, but living emotions that still shape his present. Realizing true feelings isn't always an instant event. Sometimes it's a slow build, like a series of small awakenings. a memory that stirs emotion, a dream that brings back your image, a random song that brings a lump to his throat. Other times, it hits suddenly with full force during an unexpected moment of vulnerability. Either way, once he sees clearly, he cannot unsee. Once he feels deeply, he cannot undo the awareness. True feelings have a unique kind of gravity. They draw him back not out of loneliness or boredom, but because the bond was and is real. And once that realization takes hold, it becomes a magnetic force, pulling him back toward the woman he may have foolishly thought he could ever forget. In the end, when a man returns after no contact, it's not always about reliving the past or recreating what once was. It's about the deep, undeniable pull of emotions that refuse to be ignored. It's the result of unresolved feelings, the clarity that comes from reflection and the realization that sometimes what you had was irreplaceable. What makes this moment powerful isn't just the return itself, but the understanding that growth, time, and emotional evolution have shifted the dynamic. Both people involved have changed, and the space between them has offered them clarity they couldn't see before. What was once clouded with confusion, ego, or fear is now illuminated by understanding and the courage to confront the truth of their feelings. No contact then isn't a punishment or a game. It's a chance for both to heal, to grow, and to understand the value of what was lost and what could still be. It's in the silence that men often realize the depth of their feelings. It's in the absence that they come to see the importance of the bond they once shared. And when the time is right, and when they've confronted their own hearts, that realization may be what leads them back to you, not to recreate the past, but to explore the possibility of a future with greater depth, understanding, and mutual respect. So, when he returns, remember, it's not just the pull of the past, it's the awakening of something true, something real. It's the recognition that some bonds are too strong, too meaningful, and too important to ever fully let go of. And sometimes, no matter how far you go, the heart always finds its way back to where it belongs.